This is Common Sense Radio. Straightforward and no excuses.
All right. Come on now.
This is the Steve Gruber Show.
Call me crazy.
Oh, yeah.
What I said was perfectly right and spot on accurate.
Boy's got a mouth like a cannon, always shooting it all.
Stop. Yeah, stop. I mean, you're way off script.
Got it in me. Gonna quit until it all comes out.
Hey, boy!
Been a long education.
Yeah, it's not cynical. It's common sense.
Pay attention to me when I'm talking to you.
I'm gonna rock the nation. Rock the nation.
Genuine, accountable, and raw. Here is Steve Gruber.
It is the political season, my friends, just coming off debate number 4 for the Republican candidates. Their next get-together, December the 15th. The Democrats have one coming up here in a few days as well. Fortunately, the moderators were not the concern yesterday. They actually had a chance to talk about some of the important issues facing America, the $20 trillion debt, and so much more. Our next guest here has an intimate relationship with politics, to say the least. Joining me now, former Speaker of the House, Newt Gingrich, an American politician, historian, author, and so much more. Mr. Speaker, welcome on board.
Well, it's good to be with you and to have a chance to chat with you.
Well, you've got a brand new book out. I want to talk about duplicity here in a moment. But first, I'd like to ask you your impression thus far. You were a presidential candidate in 2012, leading the polls at about this time in that cycle. Your fortunes didn't pan out, but you've been there. You've been in the mix of it. What do you make of the field so far?
Well, I think last night was actually a pretty good debate. The Fox business people were much more policy-oriented. The choices that came across are clarifying. And frankly, almost everybody had a pretty decent night. Jeb Bush gets high marks. People think that he was much more energetic and much more aggressive than he had been. At the same time, Trump got high marks for being less aggressive than he had been. Yeah, I think the big question going in last night was whether Ben Carson could survive the various attacks on his memory of his past, and clearly he came out of there doing so. And my sense was that the big winner was Marco Rubio, that he not just handled the issues well, but that his personality, his positiveness, and his optimism were very attractive, and that he clearly got the highest marks from the people who watched the debate.
I would agree with you there, Mr. Speaker. I think that Marco Rubio, I've had the chance to talk to him in person and meet him in person, watch his stump speech. He is a true believer. And over the last 3 or 4 debates, it seems that he continues to raise his game, if you will. I do concern myself with Jeb Bush and John Kasich and Rand Paul. Some of the others seem to be trailing behind. So you've got the front runners, Trump, Carson, Rubio, and Cruz at this point. And is there anybody you prefer out of that group, or too early to tell?
No, Kloster, I know all of them, and we like them. I think you've got it down about right. What's beginning to emerge is instead of 2 top people, there are now 4. And I think that's going to lead, in terms of donations and energy and volunteers, to a consolidation. And it makes it pretty tough on people. If you're not Trump or Carson or Rubio or Cruz, you're going to have a pretty hard time raising money and organizing at this point, because to have 4 people in that position means you've got to somehow get past all 4 of them. That's going to be a big challenge.
Talking about big challenges, $20 trillion in debt now. We're a long way from the contract with America that was put together by you and your congressional colleagues in 1994, and you became Speaker of the House in 1995, a position you held for the next 4 years. Is the $20 trillion debt, in your estimation, the biggest challenge facing America today? But as you look at the landscape, what are the things that concern you most about the future?
Well, the reason I wrote duplicity is I think the biggest challenge to us is the very real danger of attacks by radical Islamists who really are spread on the Internet almost like a virus. It's much closer to epidemiology than the traditional nation versus nation fighting. And you saw this with the bomb going off in the Russian airliner last week. You saw it with the person who attacked students in California, stabbing them and having a manifesto that said he wanted to behead one of them and offered up to Allah. We have to understand that we're in a worldwide conflict that could easily last 50 to 100 years. We have no strategy for it right now. And that, in my mind, is the largest threat, is a literal threat I think we have to eventually handle the debt. And, of course, when I was Speaker with John Kasich as head of the Budget Committee, we managed to turn around the whole system in 4 years, got to a balanced budget, and by 1999, Jack Lew, the current Secretary of Treasury, who was then the Director of the Budget, said he thought by 2009 we would have paid off the national debt. So it can be done. It takes willpower. It takes hard work. But with intelligent application of reforms, you can have a better government and a smaller government do better things more effectively and literally get back to a balanced budget.
Well,
ISIS is a harder problem.
I agree. I think that the $20 trillion is critical, but you're right, Islamic terror, like you write about in your new book, Duplicity, where a master terrorist is hiding here among us and directing Islamic groups in America. My question to you is simply this. I mean, Democrats almost seem genetically impaired from saying radical Islamic terror. They won't say it. This president won't say it. They won't admit it for what it is. Vladimir Putin will call it for what it is. Other world leaders will call it for what it is. But there is a great reluctance here in America to call Islamic terrorism by name. Why?
I think political correctness and the academic left and the whole sense of you're not allowed to be judgmental. You're not allowed to characterize people. You somehow have to avoid all of this. It's the same kind of psychology that is currently involved at the University of Missouri and at Yale University. People out there who for several generations now have gotten to be tenured faculty members by believing in nonsense. And in fact, you're more likely to be promoted on the campus for believing in nonsense than you are for believing in reality. And that eventually has an effect. And the news media, Hollywood, and the Democratic leadership, all three belong to this sense of denying reality, pretending that things are okay, and living in a fantasy world.
Well, we have these coddled students, these privileged students who believe that somehow they're being mistreated. These are the most well-treated victims I have ever seen. They live a lavish lifestyle, privileged students on fabulous campuses, getting an incredible education. And I suspect there's a lot of people living in China and India and elsewhere that would like to be victims of that systemic racism, if you will, at the University of Missouri elsewhere, and be entitled to those educational opportunities.
I don't think you have to go to China. I suspect there are 20 or 30 million Americans who would gladly swap with the students at Yale, many of whom are on full scholarship.
Sure.
And who seem to think that it's their current duty to render judgment. Remember, the Yale thing started with a email about Halloween and whether or not you should wear costumes that might offend somebody. I mean, that was the beginning of the fight at Yale. Now, that is a level of absurdity that a great university ought to simply eliminate. And I think I ought to say to students, if you are determined to live in a fantasy world of absolute irresponsibility, go do it on your own.
I would agree with that. The book is Duplicity. It's by Newt Gingrich. It is about a master terrorist hiding somewhere here in the United States, directing terrorist groups here in the United States. As they say, ripped from the headlines. Speaker Gingrich, I greatly appreciate you taking the time today to join us here and talk about some of these things. I have a time to visit with your wife here after the break. Callista will be joining us with her new book. Newt Gingrich, thank you so much for being on the Steve Gruber Show.
Thank you. Great being with you.
Genuine Michigan common sense on display every day.
All right, it's Wednesday. How about a bonus? How about a bonus for you today? It's not quite Black Friday yet. We just had former Speaker of the House, Newt Gingrich, here with us. And now, the better half, if you will, Callista Gingrich here. She has a new book as well. Callista, welcome to the program.
Well, good morning, Steve. Thanks for having us.
Glad to have you, and I really appreciate it. You have a new book, Alice the Elephant Discovers How Christmas Has Been Celebrated Throughout America's History. And, you know, in this day and age when America seems to be, I don't know, Christmas seems to be under attack in America, I guess, every place you go. You know what? I do agree with something Donald Trump said. I will say Merry Christmas for the rest of my life. It's not Happy Holidays. There's a reason that we celebrate Christmas, and it ought to be clear to everybody. At least that's my take on it.
Absolutely. You know, Christmas in America has been celebrated since the very beginning. In fact, the Jamestown colonists celebrated Christmas en route to America aboard their ships in 1606. And it's so important for our young Americans to learn how Christmas has really become a cherished part of the American experience.
You know, I'm kind of a history buff. I don't know if I'm as good as you and your husband, but I'm pretty good at the game. But I saw a couple of things here that made me scratch my head and smile, things that I didn't know and never heard before. For example, George Washington displayed a live camel for his Christmas guest at Mount Vernon. Where in the world did George Washington get a camel back in the day?
Well, he rented a live camel from a friend in Alexandria, and it's an absolutely true story for his guests to see at Mount Vernon in 1787. And the Washingtons had many visitors, and as an animal lover, George Washington thought his guests would find the camel fascinating. And they did. And today, if you go to Mount Vernon at Christmas time, you can still see a camel there. They have Aladdin the camel for their Christmas guests. So it's a wonderful tradition.
You see, now there's, and I think that's a neat little nugget that people aren't going to hear anywhere else. They're going to, really? I had no idea. I mean, I know about the cherry tree. I know about wooden teeth. I don't know about the camel. Fair enough.
1787 was not only the year of the Constitution, but the year of the camel.
Amen, Callista. I'll give you that. I have heard stories on some of the other stories you talk about in the book. America at its best at Christmas. You really are highlighting that. How soldiers during World War II, the Germans and the Americans, I've heard these stories, that on Christmas Day, they would set down their weapons for one day and say, nobody's going to die today. And, you know, those are touching stories.
Absolutely. So important for our kids to hear. I do highlight the story of German and American soldiers actually sharing a Christmas dinner in the home of a Belgian woman. So these are amazing moments and a rich part of our history that I want to highlight for our children.
Yeah. And the book is Christmas in America. It's from Callista Gingrich. It's on the New York Times best-selling list. Alice the Elephant introduces young children to the... any reason for the elephant? I'm joking, of course. Alice the Elephant introduces young children to the tales and traditions that have made Christmas just so much of the American landscape. But here's the challenge we face today, Callista, as you well know. Schools and public places, you know, Christmas, in effect, is being run out of town. And people think that Christmas is about Black Friday and saving money at the big box stores, when really that's really not much of it at all.
Right. You know, Christmas in America is both spiritually and culturally important. It's really a time when we remember what matters the most, including our faith and family and friends. And this book explores how Christmas has been celebrated throughout American history and really brought out the best in our nation. And that's what I want to share with our kids.
And I think these are stories. And I have young children, 3 and 10. And I wonder today what books I can buy that show the greatness of America, the exceptional behavior of America and Americans as citizens over the last 250 years. And there aren't as many selections, I can assure you today, as you well know, as there were 50 years ago when I joined the party. So it's important to have these books.
That's so right. And, you know, I write these books because I love our country, and I do believe America is an exceptional nation. And I think it's more important now than ever that our kids understand what makes this country so special. And to do that, they need an understanding of American history. And unfortunately, today, many of our kids are failing to learn our history, including our founding principles and values, and instead learning revisionist or politically correct history. And as a result, are really losing out on the basics of our history. So I think we owe it to our kids to give them tools at a very early age so they can begin to appreciate the greatness of this nation.
I would agree with that. I think a redacted history is really no history at all. We're on the line with Callista Gingrich here at the Steve Gruber Show. And in the new book, you've got Alice the Elephant. The book is titled Christmas in America, correct?
That's right, and it's the 5th volume in the Alice the Elephant series. And this series offers a guided tour of American history for 4 to 8-year-olds. And
that's perfect. So that's why I will pick up a copy of the book, because my little guy is going to turn 4 here in a few weeks. And, you know, again, there are not that many resources because I read to my kids every night, right? And there are not that many resources to share with kids the greatness of America anymore. The opportunities, the options out there that my parents and my grandparents read to me and my brothers, they just aren't there. So I think that this is more important for young kids to hear it from their parents as well. Just like you said, we have to lay the groundwork so they understand what a great nation they live in.
That's right. You know, studying our history is so important. It encourages our patriotism. It teaches us the key lessons about being American, and it really helps us understand who we are. So it's so important for our young Americans to start to have an appreciation of our history at an early age.
And the really great part is I can buy this without facing the crowds on Black Friday. See, so there's a bonus there as well. I don't have to go out and, work my way down aisle number 3. I can just go to all the usual places, I would guess, like Amazon.
That's right. The book is available on Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com. You can come to GingrichProductions.com as well, so wherever you like to shop.
I greatly appreciate it. Callista Gingrich, greatly appreciate it. For you and Newt this morning, thank you for taking the time this morning and talking to us. It's been good fun and a good conversation.
Thanks so much, Steve. Have a great day.
You too, my friend. There it is, Callista Gingrich, everybody. The book is Christmas in America. And how important is this for your kids and grandkids? There really aren't resources out there anymore. Trust me, I look. I read to the kids pretty much every night, and there are not a lot of sources out there for good, patriotic books for kids the way they used to be. Christmas in America. Check it out. It's Wednesday here on the Steve Gruber Show. By the way, if you ever want to go back and listen to these interviews, you can go to stevegruber.com, click the button for previous programs. You can listen to entire programs or specific interviews like Newt and Callista Gingrich, only on the Steve Gruber Show.
Keeping you in touch with Michigan and the world.
Everything you've got. You keep on dancing and the rhythm gets hot. You drive us wild, we'll drive you crazy.
Welcome back to it. It's Wednesday on the Steve Gruber Show. I appreciate your support. But let's be honest, we're going to get more entertainment in a 3-hour period than you do here, and information, and things to consider, and things that make you go, never thought of that. This is the place to do all of those things every day. I only ask for 3 hours. 6 to 9, Common Sense Radio for you. Andrew Kloster, our next guest, a legal fellow at the Edwin Meese Center for Legal and Judicial Studies at the Heritage Foundation. We've been talking a lot about this. The mob rules at Missouri and Yale and a whole lot of other places, it seems. If you're offended and you don't have a safe place, well, by God, you better call for the removal of university presidents and so forth. Andrew, welcome to the program.
Hi, good morning. Thanks for having me.
So let me ask you, Andrew, for the sake of argument, let me play devil's advocate. If you're the president of a university, a major university in America, and somewhere on your vast campus, in one dorm, in one bathroom, in one stall, somewhere on this campus that probably has hundreds, maybe thousands of bathrooms, some student, some unknown student, smears a swastika with fecal matter on the wall. What is the appropriate response? Do you run over with a bottle of Mr. Clean, or is that too misogynistic?
Well, that would make sense if the swastika were actually there. We don't even have any confirmation that the swastika was actually there.
So no picture, no proof.
One sort of hearsay report, but that's never been confirmed.
Right, and why is the swastika, why is it uniquely offensive to the black population? My estimation of the world is it's offensive to all minority populations, but probably more predominantly to the Jewish community. But that's just my take on history.
Sure, and beyond that, it's one incident that the university should respond to, and they would if they could find out who it was. But I don't think it warrants any sort of mob, activity. It doesn't warrant a tent city. Doesn't warrant, pushing reporters out, physically pushing reporters out, saying that we have a reporter-free safe zone. It doesn't warrant any of that. It warrants a measured response by the campus. And that is not, we haven't seen anything that has been, 1-to-1 in terms of an appropriate response.
Right. So I guess then the next part comes up. Let's be honest. Most of the colleges that I see today are so spectacular. They have workout centers and Olympic-sized pools and study areas and libraries with everything under the sun you can imagine. These places are fantastic. Heck, high schools look like junior colleges from the days that when I was going to school, when I was, younger days. These students that claim to be victims are some of the most privileged people, not only in America, but in the world. But damn it, they're going to tell you they're a victim. Really?
I think that's exactly right. Beyond that, if you look at Missouri, some of the students that were saying they were going to strike, these were Division I football students. These are students on scholarship. They're not having to pay for their education. They're treated with kid gloves. In fact, I'm, reading between the lines, I think anyone who reads what happened in Missouri and the resignation of the president knows that he was sort of pressured out, and it was probably because of the football stuff. So these are very privileged students. They know their position, and yet they're pretending like, it's the end of the world for them. And it's not. And even just last night, if you looked on social media, there were some fake reports of all sorts of violence, and the KKK is confirmed on campus. Absolutely false. The police said they were false. But this is just the kind of misinformation that's out there to make it look like these students are somehow in the right.
Here's where I go over the line. Here's where I have this crazy notion, Andrew. And Andrew Kloster here with us from the Heritage Foundation. I say if the Ku Klux Klan is on campus, so what? And here's why I say that, and here's where I'm going to get in trouble, and you can take a step back, that's fine. The fact of the matter is, the old saying rings true more today than ever in my life. I may not agree with a single word you say, but I will defend to the death your right to say it, because that's what America is about. And the only reason and the only way you can find true foolishness and truly stupid behavior is let the other people talk. Let them tell you their position. So when you hear the Klan talking, you go, that's absolutely absurd. But let the Klan be there, just like they were in Skokie, Illinois in 1977. Let them march down the street. Let them spew their hatred and their anger and their nonsense, because that's what solidifies people, good people, together on the other side of the topic. But by burning the books and banning the comments and saying, oh, I don't have a safe space, and you can't say that because that's hate speech, and I'm offended, and I don't know what to do, and I'm going to panic. That is nonsense.
I completely agree, and it reminds me of just to go back to Skokie real quick, reminds me of my favorite Blues Brothers quote, Illinois Nazis. I hate Illinois Nazis.
Exactly.
But
exactly.
Look, I mean, what you said, it's not politically correct to say these things nowadays, but you're absolutely legally correct. I mean, the touchstone for universities is to provide an education for their students and to maintain safety on campus. And the safety is in order to provide that education. And the KKK, in and of themselves, first of all, let's just make it clear, they're not on campus. There have been no KKK people on campus. But let's, for the sake of argument, say that they are. That in and of itself doesn't mean anything unless they are actually threatening people.
So let me ask you something.
And that's what the First Amendment says, and so I think you're absolutely correct.
Isn't the KKK on campus, wouldn't that reflect diversity? After all, my friend, after all, and in fairness, and no kidding here, straight up, Louis Farrakhan and the Nation of Islam, one of the most hate-filled groups in America through my entire lifetime, who hate white people, who are openly racist, who are openly antagonistic to race wars and race baiting, the Nation of Islam and Louis Farrakhan are welcome on every college campus. And I would say this, what the hell is the difference?
I think, well, look, and I mean, I remember back when Colombia had, Iran's leader Ahmadinejad, Mahmoud Ahmadinejad. So, campuses do pick and choose. I think that's exactly correct. Campuses do pick and choose who they think is politically correct to have on campus. I'm not supporting bringing the KKK to campus. I don't support them. I don't think, I know you don't. None of your listeners probably do. That's beside the point. The point is you're exactly right. There's a double standard here. These people are getting offended over a whole bunch of nothing. But the real shame to me is that it's interfering with the education of other students. There are lots of other students in Missouri that just want life to go on as usual, and they are the people who are being damaged.
Let me explain to you the danger that the First Amendment of the United States faces today. I'm watching a report right now flash across my flat screen about the police investigating hurtful speech. Hurtful speech, my friends. You think the Second Amendment is in peril with liberals. It is. But the First Amendment is in peril just as much because liberals are so accepting and they want this diversity. They want to embrace everybody, unless you don't think exactly the way they do, at which point it's hate speech, it's offensive, it hurts people's feelings. What next? You can't talk about abortions because that's offensive. You can't talk about race. That's offensive. You can't talk about, people that are poor. That's offensive. You can't talk about any ethnic group. That's offensive. It's all BS. And unfortunately, if we don't stand up, Andrew, it's going to be too late. I'll give you 10 seconds for the last word.
Sure, I completely agree with that. I have another piece up at the Daily Signal on how I think what is happening in Missouri and asking people to report to the police about the snitching about hate and hurtful speech. It's like the Stasi in East Germany. The system of snitching it's un-American, and it really is contrary to the First Amendment.
Andrew, take some time. Turn in your neighbor today. Andrew Kloster from the Heritage Foundation. Thanks, my friend.
Thank you.
Genuine Michigan common sense on display every day.
People try to put us to down. Talking about my generation. Just because we get around. Talking about my generation. Things they do look awful.
You know, in my generation, we didn't sit around and piss and moan about, oh, you owe me this and you owe me that and I deserve this and that's mine. Let me explain something to you. Just because the government says it's okay to take money from your neighbors doesn't mean it is not theft. Just because it is sanctioned by the government doesn't mean you are not stealing from your neighbors. Just because the government says that it is okay doesn't mean it is morally correct. Let me give you an example. You think I'm wrong? Well, the government says we can tax this, and so there it's the law, Steve, and therefore it's okay. No, it's not. It's not okay to steal from your neighbors. Tax them here, tax them there. It is not okay to steal from your neighbors because the government says it's okay. Let me remind you. In 1940, it was basically illegal to be Jewish in Germany. That was the law. Does that make the law right? And the answer is an emphatic no, of course not. Stand up, America. Well, there we go. My next guest, Megan Barth, founder and proprietor of ReaganBaby.com. Come on, step into the water. It's nice, Megan. Come on in.
Good morning.
I'm a little sick and tired. Yeah, I'm a little sick and tired of the whole Missouri. We're victims. We don't get enough. We need more. Really? Look at the places that you're going to school for free, a lot of you, including the college football players, full scholarship. Look at the facilities you have. Multi-million-dollar stadiums and research facilities and labs and all of these wonderful, great things that I'm sure millions of other kids around America would be more than grateful to go and enjoy, while you guys were victims. You are not victims. You're coddled little spoiled snot-nosed brats. Okay, I got that off my chest.
I just want to say, that blonde lives matter. I want to know where my safe space is. I want to know where my safe space is from all of these kooks and liars and mobs and
Megan,
that are taking over our campuses.
Yeah, Megan.
Yes.
If you're blonde, could you even find your safe space?
I know that is a problem sometimes. But hey, even a blind squirrel finds a nut every once in a while,
how
right?
insensitive of me. Anyhow. At some point, it didn't get touched much last night that I saw at all, in fact. But this whole conversation, this Yale student screaming at the master to go F himself because he had the nerve to say, I don't agree with your point of view. And who the F hired you? And you've heard the tape, right? Yeah, this whole, this hysterical screaming at the professors because, they had a different point of view than you.
The professor needs a safe space from this mob.
It looked like
Most of the people do, yes. Yeah. I mean, they're so violent, and they're yelling, and they're spitting, and they're in front of people's faces, and they're pointing, and they're shoving. It's like, who needs the safe space?
Yeah.
These people are crazy.
Yeah, they need to say, we don't want to be offended. Well, here's the thing. America has founded one of the basic principles, which is why it is enumerated in the First Amendment, is the free exchange of ideas, all ideas, ones you don't like, ones that offend you. That's the whole purpose, so you can figure out what you like, what you don't like, what works, what doesn't work. If you only get to look at one set of ideas, you end up with, some ridiculous outcome. And, like we're building windmills to save the planet that doesn't need... Yeah, anyhow, that's a different story. But, you get one point of view. I just say we need to
reinstate the draft. Reinstate the draft, and then good luck with these people, these college students, finding a safe space.
Are you stalking me? Megan, I wrote that about an hour ago and posted it. Wouldn't it be nice if America,
not.
I swear to God, if we had in America, like they have in Israel, compulsory military service at the age of 18 for 2 years for everybody, it would teach accountability, respect for the nation. People would understand what going to war really means and what the price really is. Yeah, I wrote that about an hour ago and posted that. I appreciate you reading my material.
Well, great minds think alike.
Amen. But, okay, so where do we go here? Let's talk about the GOP debate real quick in the last couple of minutes we have. Once again, to me, I didn't even think it was close. I think Marco Rubio, once again, that's about 3 out of 4 now. The last 3 debates, Marco Rubio is on his game. His answers are enthusiastic. They're accurate. They are American-centric, thank God. And maybe his immigration policies aren't perfect, but overall, he seems to be a stronger candidate every day.
Well, I expected that from Marco Rubio. I've been watching him for a long time. And every once in a while, I'll tune him out because I do hear the same type of recycled speech that he gives. And I've seen it since he's been senator. But yes, I didn't expect anything less than a strong performance. And Rubio has, a lot going for him because when Bush and Kasich drop out, he'll pick up their supporters.
Well, and after last night's performance, apparently Jeb and John they're cleaning up the basement today, which is bizarre considering they both had a ton of money. Kasich was in second place, in first place at one point in New Hampshire because of the Sununu family and his backing there. That's been 2 or 3 months ago. He's in Ohio. He is I thought, in the pole position to possibly get the nomination. I don't believe that today. I think he's fading. Jeb Bush is fading. Jeb is another lackluster. And what has he done to his hair? I'm sorry, that's an aside. They're both to Jeb Bush. What is it? I mean, they're both.
Oh, I don't.
They're both fading. They are irrelevant. The top 4 are Cruz, Rubio, Carson, and Trump. And Carson did himself no favors last night. I don't think Trump did himself any favors. I think you're going to see Marco Rubio maybe slide toward the front of this whole deal, and Ted Cruz is going to be right there with him, running in his hip pocket, I think.
Yeah, I think Kasich thought he was at the Democrat debate. He missed it by a week. Hillary Clinton, I think, is calling up his campaign this morning, especially when he got into the banking issue. I'm sitting there listening to it and saying, oh, my God, government under your command is going to teach Wall Street an ethics lesson?
Yeah.
Are you kidding me?
Well, Wall Street needs an ethics
Wall
lesson.
Street could probably teach some of those in government about ethics.
Well, I could debate both sides of that. I mean, when people on Wall Street raid retirement funds for folks, I mean, there's some black-hearted people on both sides of that conversation. But I'll give you 20 seconds for the last word, my friend.
Well, I agree with you as far as the leaders. Carson and Trump are going to kind of play it safe in the fact that they have the lead. The only way they can go down. I don't think that they're going to see a drop in their numbers. I do agree with the Cruz and Rubio rise. But I thought Carly, again, did a great job. People are saying that she interrupted too much. Well, when you're on a crowded stage like that, some interruptions are necessary to get some time. And I thought she did really well.
Welcome back. Megan Barth still with us from ReaganBaby.com because we didn't get everything in there that we wanted. Believe it or not, Megan, and we only have a couple minutes here, but I thought that Rand Paul actually finally had a decent showing, although him saying, had a decent showing, but him saying that, spending too much on the military is a bad idea. I think that's where Rubio came out ahead in that conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. Rubio always has a very keen response when it comes to defense and military. And, he is the guy to watch. He is going to rise in the polls. And like I said, when Bush and Kasich drop out, he is going to get their donors. And when Trump and Carson perhaps leave the field, then I would see Cruz getting their donors. So it's going to be a really interesting matchup. I had someone that kind of rolls with the establishment in D.C. tell me that, there was a lot of talk around the water cooler about running a Rubio-Kasich ticket. And I started laughing. That's not going to be acceptable, especially in this election.
Not after last night. It might have
worked maybe in the last one, but in this one, it's such an outsider race. You look at Cruz as an outsider even from D.C. because he challenges the establishment. I don't know that the same can be said about Rubio specifically with his H-1 visa program. These things are going to come out as we go along. But what I can say is that anyone on that main stage, even Christie, I missed Christie last night. I really did. I thought that, he's kind of like the heavier set guy in high school, like the chubby guy in high school that was snarky and funny that everyone liked. That's Christie, and that's what was kind of missing from the main stage.
No question.
But any one of those people, I would take handily over any day that ends in Y compared to two elderly socialists.
Now, I'll give you that. No, Marxists. Let's use the right terminology.
Okay, all right.
They are, I mean, go look at Karl Marx when he talks about the environment. I mean, he would be so proud of them for this global warming nonsense. Oh, he would be so proud. Carl.
Well, and that's what we're up against.
Yeah. Anyhow, Megan, greatly appreciate it. As always, Megan Barth. You can go find out more. ReaganBaby.com. ReaganBaby.com. Megan Barth. Always a pleasure.
Thanks, Steve.
All right, my friends. That's all I've got. I mean, and let's be honest, that was a pretty good show. Let's talk tomorrow on Thursday. This is the Steve Gruber Show.